Thank you for auditing the Always Positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing Ants from Up There by Black Country New Road. Now listen, I take this channel pretty seriously, and I'm really proud of certain things that I don't do. I like to say, I don't give reactions. I don't give scores. I don't give grades. I give you my thoughts. And I sort of imagine that when I say that, the word thoughts is appearing on my hand, and I'm giving them to you. That is how elevated what I am trying to do is. That said, I don't give reactions, I don't give grades, but when I heard this new album, I reacted. I went, ah! I went nutty. I screamed. I cried. I yelled out of my window on the way to work, album of the year! If it's not the album of the decade, I'll eat a guitar pick. That's what I thought. So I'm going to immediately start off this video, which I have no idea how long this is going to go. I don't have a script. I just have my notes. I have a lot of notes. This might be an hour. It might be half an hour. But I'm going to start right off by reacting and giving a score. Whatever a 10 out of 10 is that I give to things, which I don't do, whatever an A+ is, which I don't give, this album gets. Whatever kind of, oh my God, reaction you want to see with tears falling and my mascara running down my face, that's what you get from listening to this album. Or at least that's what I got from listening to this album. Now there's a problem. I'm recording this on Saturday morning, which means I've had the album, in title, in Bandcamp, for a day. Now, it's all I've been doing, all I've been thinking. I've been having conversations with people, and in the back of my head, dwee-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo is just going on. But I have this issue where, so they did 4 singles, and I did a review of each single. I'll point you to those soon. But every song, when I'd hear it again, I liked it more, and every time I heard it, I'd like it more, and every time I listened, I had more to say. Every single time I listened to this album, I felt like I had 3 more pages, 10 more minutes to talk about, which is the problem of great art. It is never the right time for me to make this video. I will never be done talking about how great this video is. When I put it on the same level as Kanye's Yeezus or Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, I try to imagine if I was doing this channel back in 2013, I could have done a great video one day after, but I'm still living with those albums. I'm still discovering things that I love about those albums. So this review is way too early and already too late. It's okay. I think I'll be coming back to this over time. I like to say, there's a couple things in my life which were never the right time. It's never the right time to stop smoking. And it's always the right time to stop smoking. It's never the right time to have kids when you're in a relationship where you want to have kids. And it's never the wrong time. It's these kind of grand moments which you just have to do it. So here I am just doing this video about this album, partly because I have a lot to say, and I'm going to be a little bit arrogant. I think some of the things I'm going to say are going to make you like the album better. Even if you're like me and you're going, I think I have some insight. I actually have a little bit of behind the scenes insight, which I think you'll find interesting. And what I want to do is I want to be part of this conversation. Like when I hear an album like this, when I see a movie I like this much, I instantly go on YouTube and I try and find people saying, what are they saying and what are they thinking, developing theories. I want to be a part of that for you and for me because I'm driving my family crazy. I'm just sitting there. We had this beautiful Dutch baby for breakfast and we're eating 2 different kinds of dragon fruit. The white kind's good, the purple kind's no good. And we're sitting there and we're having this nice time and I can't even think because I'm just thinking about this exact video. Now, the last video I did about Black Country New Road was kind of down. I'll include a link to it up there. It was about their lead singer, Isaac Wood, leaving the band. I discussed how this is a good thing because we need to prize people's well-being over their output. We need to not just think that entertainers owe us their lives. They don't. We have these 2 wonderful albums, and as far as I'm concerned, this band is going to continue in what I will always call Black Country New Order. It's a little joke. Watch my video to understand. But what this does is it completely recontextualized this album right before it came out. But it was perfect because, as Isaac Wood himself says, and as other band members have said about this album, it is capturing a moment. What makes this album so good part of what makes it so good is that it is a moment. It feels like a moment. It doesn't feel like a bunch of put together modules or broken up ideas jammed into one. It feels like it's capturing a moment of this band at its creative peak. And that moment is over. In that moment is so much life and space. Those are the words that kept on coming back to me when I listened to this album. It's full of life and space. But knowing that it's their last album in this form also gives it reinforces the bittersweet nature of the album. And it is a very bittersweet album, even without this information that we have that it is the last album of Black Country New Road in its current iteration. It's sorry, I'm so excited. I'm choking up here. It's happy and sad at the same time. I mean, musically, it is a joyous triumph of humanity, of like what human beings can do when they're together, when they're working, when they're focused. But then lyrically, it's also kind of about isolation and loneliness. In that way, it does one of my favorite things that music can do, of being happy and sad at the same time. More on that soon. There's a lot of things that are genius about this album. But the name, which we have to have in our head, there's 7 members of the band, but this is definitely at least an 8-person project with the producer Sergio Machetsko as the producer, their longtime live producer who produced this album. I'm just going to call him Sergio because I think I pronounced his name properly that first time, so I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. And I need to tell you something. I'm a little bit biased. A couple Black Country New Road videos ago, he contacted me. A lot of cool things have happened because of this channel. Like, a lot. It's not just that my kids' friends think that I'm cool. Nothing's going to beat that. But this was really high up there. You know, this is like, you know, George Martin, like, hitting me up by telegram when they're recording Revolver. I mean, it seriously had that kind of feeling to me. Apparently, he and apparently some members of the band have watched my videos and like my approach and like my passion. That's as good of a compliment you can get. So maybe I'm biased. I don't think so, though. I put out, you know, just a little teaser on my YouTube community page, and unanimously, with a couple of people who are saying, you know, it's good, but maybe not a masterpiece. Basically, everyone's saying it's a masterpiece. It exceeded their expectations. They can't possibly believe it. But the thing that he did is he answered questions, and he told me things he wants people to know. So we're never, I don't think, ever going to get to the absolute truth of this album and the way that it was written. I mean, these are very good artists, and certainly Isaac Wood, who's writing most of the lyrics, is going through a hard time right now, and I don't think he's super interested in giving a director's cut as to what every single thing means. But the genius of this album, the genius of the perfection of the album, is in the way that it was recorded. So in these conversations with Sergio, he basically did what I call reverse gaslighting. So I would hear something and I'd say, that's interesting. This makes me think of this. And he would say, yes, I was thinking of that. So what I'm going to share with you right at the top of this video is some of the things that he shared with me throughout the process of making this album. And this hints at, because there's a thing about this album, it's not just the songwriting is good, which it is. There's an atmosphere. And part of what makes it so hard to describe, and part of what makes me know that this review is going to be incomplete, is that it's going to be in 5 years when I put this album on again and I go, man, nothing feels like this. Like this, it's in this pocket of like performance and production capturing performance that it just can't really be imitated. I mean, it can be imitated, but like it feels a certain way. And getting used to that feeling, much like with Random Access Memories, nothing feels like Random Access Memories to me. And when I put it on, it gives me a sense of happiness and sort of artistic joy that's like looking at a sunset or a snowstorm. So here's some things that he informed me of. The whole album is live except for the backing vocals and the main vocals plus additional instruments. So we live in a world where there's tons of plugins, He said there's no plugins, it's 100% live and analog. So there's no digital transformation, there's no pitching, there's no pocketing, there's no modular construction where the bridge worked well here and then the chorus worked well there and we'll just put it together and no one will notice. This is happening all the time in music where people keep doing things that nobody notices. No one will notice if we record the vocals 50 times and then we use 37 different takes for the final thing. No one will notice. No one will notice except everyone notices. We all notice. We just can't say it. When we hear a pop song on the radio, we feel it. I don't mean to get all mystical, Christical or anything, but it's a real thing. It's a real, you can't actually fake feel. You just can't. And it comes through in the way this was recorded. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, how could they have done this? And so I asked, as an example, for the song Concord, how many takes did it take? 5 or 6 is what he says. He said even if all the takes were good, he usually chose the one that felt that it was the most, that he felt the most, even if it wasn't perfect. The feeling and energy are more important than the perfection of the take. And that's one of the themes that I'm going to be talking about with this album, is perfection without perfectionism. This is an art which has been lost, and it's not our fault that we lost it. We have computers which help us make things perfect. For a perfectionist like myself, it can drive me out the wall. Little things. Microphone placement. This guy is nutty for mic placement. Just absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs about mic placement. Now, I'm not, if you know the channel, I'm not Adam Neely, and I'm not produced like a pro. I'm not these guys who are like super professional musicians. I am literally a professor of French, and this is just a hobby I picked up in the lobby. But what I love is the passion with which he describes it. And these are things which you know even if you don't know them. As he says, I went for basic setups for each instrument, but a lot is going on with the ambient mics. I've been influenced a lot by Al Schmidt. Look him up right now. Hey, you're a big Black Country New Road fan? Look up Al Schmidt. You'll be blown away by the things that he's done. From Neil Young to Steely Dan. It's amazing. All recordings from the 60s and 70s, mic positioned a small amount of channels for the final mix. Not much EQ or processing. So there's this whole level. So first of all, only 5 or 6 takes, which means the band is not tired. They're not exhausted of the songs. This isn't Stanley Kubrick with Shelley Duvall pushing to the limit. This is like finding a good song. The band is an amazing band. They're a very amazing live band. They're known for that. So it's going to be good. Can we get this guy to go back in time and record the Grateful Dead or something? Because I feel like there's never been a good studio Grateful Dead album. But maybe if they had Sergio, there would have been one almost as good as their live performances. Neither here nor there. So it's fascinating that this mic placement and this whole approach, it all comes through to where it doesn't sound like a live album. You don't expect to hear clapping. It's very clear there's a lot of overdubs and I mean, there's necessary overdubs of additional instruments, and the vocals are given a special extra attention. So he continues on to say that obviously all the arrangements are from the band, but the method and the final mix was from Sergio. And I think that's what we see is one of the elements that makes this album so mystically good. As my final quote from Sergio, at least at the moment, I'm just going to read this so you understand what he was going through. I did massive research to find my own voice. Then he put in parentheses, no pretensions. Hey, it's okay. You helped make a masterpiece. You can be pretentious. I wanted to make a record in a way which I like records. Pet Sounds. Revolver. You're not, right now, you're going through your head, what's the third? Pet Sounds, Revolver. What's the third? What's the logical third? 60s era, great production, known for mastery, perfection, audio bravery. On the Beach by Neil Young. All y'all loving Neil Young right now because he's fighting Joe Rogan and winning. I love Neil Young. If you're trying to figure out, what should I do? I want to listen to Neil Young and quit Spotify and acknowledge that COVID's real and we all need to be masked and vaccinated. And if you think you're wrong, you're a selfish murderer. This, right here, this is where you go. On the Beach by Neil Young. This, right here. Start here. The life and space of this album. This album is recorded so well. The lyrics are so sad, but the music is so warm and loving and well made and raw and perfect. This is the missing element. It all makes sense. And this is a lot of it's done by Al Schmidt, not the entire album, but most of it. It all makes sense. So if you're one of those Black Country New Road fans and you want to figure out how to share your excitement and what to do next, spend some time. Listen to Motion Pictures. Listen to For the Turnstiles. And you'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. Now this is not saying this is what Black Country New Road is doing. I don't know. I don't know if they're fans of this album or not. But producers really matter. And that's one thing that we see on this album. Sergio goes on. We use the word micro details and textures a lot in the album. Micro details and textures. I love the difference because textures is something that's very hard to approximate and fudge, and it's sort of a vague term, whereas micro details is very precise. Everything is there for a reason. You can hear people moving on the quiet parts of different songs. I love that the songs are alive. I spent lots of times getting the best mic combination to the instruments. I'm proud of the cymbal sound. It's true. When I read this, I went and listened to the entire album just listening for the cymbal sounds. And it's great. Every song sounded different. I got inspired from early jazz to get the tone, the same for the saxophone. I want to make them sound with a mix of close and distance mics at the same time. Difficult as we recorded live. I think we did a good job in the end. So you can see that me having this privileged information, which I am very thankful for, really does help me to understand what makes it great. Helps me to give words, which is why I want to put this out here right now. I want to share this information with you. Now, I had to make sure I could. He said I could. He also, when we're talking about the sadness of this album, in the context of Isaac Wood leaving the band, there is also a lot of happiness because they recorded it at an abbey on the Isle of Wight, where there's a famous Jimi Hendrix concert somewhere in England. I don't know. It's an island, I suppose. And so, they went, and like a lot of great albums are recorded in a specific place where the band holds up, and that's where they were. And he even sent me some behind-the-scenes photos of them making the album. But my favorite one, and this is one which hopefully they will share at some point, is the band playing soccer, football, if you must, playing football, soccer. I'm American. I'm just going to say soccer. I apologize to all of you European ears. Playing soccer with a dog. They're kicking the ball around and the dog is trying to get the ball. It is totally cute, totally charming. And it's the feeling of these young, excited people goofing around, having a quiet moment in the process of making something beautiful. But they're not, off in the corner shooting skag or, with groupies. They're like playing soccer with a dog. I asked the important question. The dog's name was Bob. I thought maybe the dog's name was Henry or Charlie or any of the other names that are on this album. But no, the dog's name is Bob. So keep that in mind while you're crying during this album. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about how sad it is, how bittersweet it is. That in the middle of all this, imagine, I think it's maybe 5 of the members of the band. I actually don't I can't tell them apart. I should say right off the bat, I've never watched them perform live. Like I've never even watched a YouTube video of them perform live. I only know them by studio. That's something I've intentionally done. I was excited to see them play in Boston. They canceled the show. That's okay. So I don't know exactly what they look like, but I can tell you they're all playing with the dog. And one of them was nice. One of them made sure that the dog got it. I don't know which one it is, but it's a very cute moment because he actually kicks it intentionally to this dog who runs off in the other direction. So, perfection without perfectionist. Microphone placement, recording live, 5 or 6 takes. Very long songs, beautifully long songs, not overlong songs. They don't feel like they're trying to be, Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven or some kind of super epic thing, but they often end up being epic things. But I haven't even really gotten to the album yet. 20 minutes in. Holy guacamole. It's okay. Normally I have a stamp where I point to one song for you to listen to. I'm not going to do that on this album. This album's a little too rich to do that. It's sort of a concept album, but without the limitations of that. I mean, it's interesting. I have their other album back there where they kind of leaned into anonymity. All the pictures on the inside of the album were taken off some kind of free image sharing website, and it had sort of an intentionally cold and distant feeling. I'm waiting for my vinyl to arrive. It's being shipped from England. One second. I need to move back. The light is getting really wonky over here. I don't edit my videos either, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. Like there's a certain like coldness to that, where here they have a totally unified like chipboard with specific like little things in bags on the covers. There's a much more unified and I think more interesting visual content. I think the title of the album, Ants from Up There, is more interesting than For the First Time. And so we're here. And I've already have 4 singles. I've already covered 4 singles in great detail. And I'll point to you when we get to those. I'll point you to those videos. But part of what makes this album so good is I had no idea how they were going to fit together as an album. But they fit together so well that I'm mad at myself for even getting attached to them as singles because they flow so well one from the other. So if I'm claiming this is a sort of theme album, what is it about? I think if we were to take a bird's eye view, like Corday, if we're on a Concorde and Ants Down There is this album, I think we could say this album is about needing to leave the band. I think we could unify everything and see it very clearly. And I get it that it's sad, sort of. But how sad can you be when an album has given you a masterpiece and part of that masterpiece is describing why it has to be the moment that is past? Do we have to know that there's going to be... Do we have to know that there's going to be a Sgt. Pepper's to really enjoy Revolver? We don't. So I tried. I'm trying to break down all these lyrics. He writes lyrics in such an oblique way, so poetic, but then he has all these themes that recur. So I want to show you what my process has been. I'm full Charlie Day on this. This is what I'm up to, okay? This is my code sheet where I printed out all the lyrics and I came up with all the themes that repeat all the way through, okay? If you want to like pause it and take a look and try to read my handwriting, you can do that. And I would go through on the papers and I would try to figure it all out and make sure that I knew where all these themes were. And so I roughly broke them down into 3 or 4 primary themes that dominate the album, which all fall under the category, I believe, of why the lead singer needs to move on to a more stable, a happier, less fame involved, less money involved, less superficiality involved, less pressure, to a place where essentially he needs to be less of a sad boy. Even if his music is so eloquent at describing the feelings of being a sad boy, he needs to move on. So, what are some of these themes? Some of these themes, how I sort of unified them on this sheet of absolute bonkersness, okay? Disruption of travel. That's one of the themes. I talked about how I compared him leaving the band as a positive version of Ian Curtis leaving Joy Division. So Ian Curtis killed himself before an American tour. And that's why Joy Division broke up and then New Order had to be formed in his absence. And so I see this, he broke up right before, he left the band right before they were going to go on Tour of America. And I'm saying this is the positive version because there's no tragedy. There's just, oh, bummer, man. I really like that group, as opposed to a great tragedy. But I think a lot of this album is about like the disruption of travel, of touring, of how travel can destroy relationships, how it forces you to change yourself. This omnipresent theme of the Concorde is fascinating because Concorde is the image of like transcontinental flight and the pinnacle of I think it was designed by the French, of French engineering. But it blew up in 2003 and we haven't used it since. Like, it's not actually accurate. And alongside the airplanes, There's boats and trains and drones. And constantly we gain the sense of the home being destructed. I get the feeling through his lyrics. I've not read interviews with him. I don't know him. I can't tell which of the young dudes with mustaches he is in the band when I see pictures of them. Seriously. Like, he just wants a home. And this Concorde, this is a destructive force. This image of travel. This part of his job, which is this travel, that turns him into a chaos space marine. Affiliated with that, but I don't think completely tied to that, is a theme of a failed relationship. Maybe multiple relationships, but where people, I assume woman who he's attracted to or who he's in a relationship with, shows some kind of cruel indifference that turns him into an unwanted piece of bread, a kind of annoyance. This woman is often depicted as having Billie Eilish style. That's a black velvet painting. Go to velvetgeek.com. My friend Bruce made that artwork. He's a great artist. Maybe you want to go there and get an Isaac painting. He would do it. It's not too expensive. Check it out. You know, like I'm going to talk a lot about Billie Eilish and why she's on this album so much, but a kind of cool, destructive lover. And I don't know if this Billie Eilish character is supposed to be representative of a particular woman, or as I will get into, perhaps humanity in general, or fans, or people, or expectations. But the largest theme is that of the sad boy. And I need to apologize, because I previously talked about how I often think of England as having sort of a great history of sad boy bands, and you know, the Smiths and Radiohead and now Black Country New Road, and someone pointed out that, well, now half the band are women. So I apologize. Again, I've never seen them. I know there's women in the band, so I apologize. Sad boys and girls. It really feels like he's doing a very good job of describing a certain kind of depression, always poetically and never with sort of pity. Like, unlike maybe the Smiths, you know, he's never quite as self-pitying as Morrissey, nor as distanced as Tom York. And the way that this sadness comes through is in a lot of different ways. He reduces himself to a clamp, a kind of a human reduced to its function, which I think might tie into the breakup of the band, the feeling of just being a cog in a machine, that you just have to make content. He's often waking up and going to sleep, which I think is a theme with depression. You know, sleep is a lack of, or too much sleep is a sign of depression. Holes keep coming back in this album. There's holes all over the place. Broken bones. A lot of themes of telephonics and intrusive technology. The tyranny of cell phones, the tyranny of Wi-Fi is only ever really felt when there's a lack of telephone calls, when there's a lack of Wi-Fi, and that's what we have here. It's an odd, very 21st century way to describe depression, but we're there. There's also, and this is what I think the Billie Eilish thing is really about, the tyranny of cool and of how you're perceived. When you are a lead singer of a popular upcoming rock and roll band, the amount of pressure on you to be cool, to be Jarvis Cocker, to be Tom York, to be whichever of the Gallagher brothers is the leader of Oasis. Nigel? Whichever one is the leader of Oasis. That one, you know? Like the pressure to be cool, to be styling. It's tyranny. I don't think this guy wants that. I think this guy just wants to be one of these 7 people who are making music together. But our society doesn't permit it. Someone's got to be the guy. They're a collective band living in an individualist world. And I think that's probably what ultimately would lead to him having to leave the band. If everyone spent that much time thinking about the awesome saxophone player, just as much time, maybe it wouldn't have been so oppressive. Tied in with that is a sort of obsession with celebrity culture. In that way, he does remind me a little bit of Morrissey, talking about Charlie XCX and Billie Eilish and Kanye. But all together, all these kind of sad imagery, the image of somebody who's in a situation he doesn't want to be in, who has to keep traveling, who just wants to be home, finds relationships, and the relationships break him apart, and then he has to travel, and he feels that the Concorde, the jet, is tearing up his entire home. The problem is, there's no hope in this album for him. Not really. There's no hopeful way out. He sings as someone who is inured to a situation, but not someone who's found a way out. The sort of happy moments are references to like childhood memories and the playground. He talks about being transformed and leaving his body, but he's becoming something he doesn't want. There's a surprising amount of Christian imagery in this album, which I will get to later, but I don't think that's the hope for him either. I don't think he's going to convert to Christianity and be out. I think that's why him leaving the band is the logical conclusion to the album itself. It is actually the cherry on the top of the sundae that is this album. As much as I wish it didn't happen, it all makes sense. He has to get out of the Concorde. He just has to get out of it. He has to stop being Billie Eilish style and sunglasses. He just has to be a human being. It's sad. It's happy. A quick note, whenever I try to get people to like this band, I just like to say that they're the kind of band that all of my friends in high school would have liked for different reasons. I had a lot of different groups of friends in high school, and some of them were super into like very technical music, and then I was into more kind of like raw music that's a little bit rough and like, hey, it's cool, Neil Young, that kind of stuff. This band, like Radiohead actually, has that. Like OK Computer, my friends who listen to Al Di Meola and Fish liked Radiohead, OK Computer, and then my friends who just listen to Neil Young and Sonic Youth also liked it. The music has that ability. So let's actually get into the album. 30 minutes in. This is going really well, by the way. I'm psyched. I'm happy. Right now, my DOGSs are not making any noise. My family is content upstairs. Kids are doing homework. If you want to buy a mug, you can click on the link in my description or whatever. Or don't. Make sure you buy this album first. So, the album starts with intro. Perfect. Sets the tone and makes it clear what's going on in this album. It has an intro. It indicates a certain amount of foresight, indicates a certain amount of vision. This kind of like 3-note guitar that leads up to some space for a violin. And then the violins and the horns do something which is very reminiscent of the music of Philip Glass. So Glass's work is like, it's associated with minimalism, but it isn't really. It's like repetitive phrasing and shifting layers. That's the best way to describe what he does. This isn't totally aping that, but that style, that tonality, and that repetition is often what the horns and the strings are doing, which mixed together with interesting rock is amazing. And this song, this intro, perfectly sets the table for Chaos Space Marine, the next song on the album. Chaos Space Marine was their first single off this album, but it's so much better now with that intro leading into it. There's my video on Chaos Space Marine. Check it out. I think I talk about it for like half an hour, so I'm going to talk about it less now. It announces a lot of the themes on the album. It starts off with the lyric, "England is mine." Now listen, this is definitely a reference to Morrissey and the Smiths, the song Still Ill, "England is mine and it owes me a living." And this is where I realized there's a lot of similarity actually between the Smiths and this album. Because the music on this album is so happy and full of life. Now, it doesn't jangle the way the Smiths do, but the way it's recorded by a bunch of people playing soccer, football, playing round ball on the ground game with Bob the dog, that comes through in the music, that warmth and beauty. And then mixed with these sad boy lyrics. That's what the Smiths can do so well. The sad boy and the happy people, right? It's great. The chorus talks again about leaving this body, and this idea of England being mine, this is the sense that I got from the last album, that it's a thing that all non-American groups have to do. They have to make it in their country and then conquer America. Since the damn Beatles did it, that's like the way it has to be. And so this pain and this pressure really comes through. Here's a complaint. I haven't said one bad thing yet. I don't think this song works as the opening single to the album. It works as the opening song to the album, but it didn't really announce what the album was going to feel like. This one song, unlike the rest, is a little maximal. There's too many different parts, too much whimsy, too many wink, bong, 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 bing, bing, kind of circus-like, goofy and funny, which the rest of the album really isn't. That's a small mistake. Not a mistake, a small nit I have to pick. One thing I'm going to be highlighting is all the confusing quotes. One trick that Isaac Wood uses in his lyric writing, which I can't think of other lyric writers who do this, is he quotes people saying completely incomprehensible jabberwocky. Like, I don't know what you said to me, oh, I'm a Chaos Space Marine. That's the first obscure, weird quote, and not the last on the album. This also has a reference to many more conveyances. I get the sense almost, so it's a Marine, but it's a Space Marine, but also he mentions the Concorde as well. So all these different ways of crossing space, of traveling, of trying to conquer other lands, while at the same time just wanting to be home. And this is the first reference in the album to a hole, referring to the hole he dug. One of the videos that Sergio shared with me totally changes the way that I hear this song. He shared with me a video of the band singing the backup vocals in the very end section. Oh yeah! And there's someone leading them like a conductor, and he's kind of like bouncing up and down. Oh yeah! And they're all smiling and singing, and they're in this cool abbey, and there's just a cool wooden beam across the way, and the rugs on the ubiquitous rugs on the studio floor. It's just, really helps me recontextualize it, and I showed the video to my kids, and then I played the song, a day later, and they're like, all I can see is that thing happening. And I want to put that in your head, even if I can't share it with you. I can't share it with you. I don't even have it anymore, but I saw it. Like you can just imagine that happiness. Next song is another single, which I covered in a different video, Concorde. I'll include a link to my Concorde video up there. One thing on listening, putting this in context, obviously the Concorde in the previous song was mentioned and it's carried forth to this song. So there is this sense of continuity, this bizarre, multiple theme kind of concept album. The problem with concept albums is that they're kind of annoying and it can feel too much like a musical. I mean, even the great ones, the truly great ones like Quadrophenia or Animals, it can be a little laborious. I think because of how fractured and poetic it is on here, we never get that feeling. But Concorde, right here. The frailty in his voice on this song is absolutely a feature. Like, it is not a mistake. It's not a bug. There's a beauty and a frailty, which, again, going back to the job that Sergio had to do, I assume, is picking the right way to get him to sing. To be able to match a song. I keep going back to Motion Pictures because that's my favorite song on this album. Seriously, have a listen to it. He's more than just a Joe Rogan hater. It's an astoundingly great vocal take. And he's a great vocalist. And it really does come through here. Also, the themes of technology start to come in here. Don't text me till winter. Sorry, I spoke too soon. One of my dogs is causing trouble. Toby's trying to get into one of the bedrooms upstairs. Toby is my dog, and he's so smart that he opens up round door handles with his teeth. He's a weirdo. So, don't text me till winter. The themes of communication breaking down. I think the themes of communication are also linked to this long distances that we have here, where you have to take the Concorde, or you have to be a Chaos Space Marine, or you have to take a battleship or a boat, whatever it is. You have to go somewhere far. This communication to connect back home, to connect to someone you love, is constantly being interrupted, either intentionally or unintentionally. Don't text me, don't call me, don't do anything. I'm not going to answer. The instrumental break in the post-chorus is still the highlight of this album. It just can't be described. You just have to listen to it, learn to love it, get it stuck in your head. It is just such a great moment. It's literally like one of my favorite moments in all of music history. Seriously, that's how good this little moment is of this band playing together. I love the drone of the guitar amp at the end, really emphasizing the live recording. Lyrically, the saddest line in the whole album is here. Isaac will suffer. So there's a whole theme of childishness throughout this album, which I'm going to get into more later, and kind of tying back to childhood and sadness. And he talks about like sleeping in a light blue sleeper, which is sort of like pajamas, basically for a kid, and like Isaac will suffer, referring to yourself in the third person. I feel that he's really pushing us to see him as somebody whose situation has made him vulnerable, regressive, and really incapable of functioning as an adult as he's expected to perform as an adult, as lead singer of an up-and-coming rock band. Also, what was shared with me by Sergio was a demo version of this song, which is just great because it's this very rough mix. And what is cool is hearing like messing around with the with different sounds, messing around with like saxophone sounds, very subtle differences. Like the piano interlude was extended out. It sounds like there's a cello on there. It's great because the rough mix is great. It's awesome. I mean, anybody would be happy to have that. But it's nothing compared to the final mix that's actually on the album. And that's part of the excitement. I think that's why he shared it with me. Is because, like, it's not like they were giving him crap, and gold. They were giving him gold, and gold. And he had to, like, figure out, like, actually that accordion sound, no. Replace it with this. And that's what we're left with. Also, the continuity in the album is so beautiful in the beginning here. We have the intro, which is instrumental, which announces a lot of the sounds that we're going to hear on Chaos Space Marine, which announces the Concorde, which will be featured on Concorde. In the middle of Concorde, he talks about that the person he's talking to is on Atkins. Atkins is a fad diet, which goes against everything I believe, which is that one must eat as much bread as possible. I am a professor of French, which is against eating carbohydrates. So in this song, where he defines himself basically as a piece of bread, an unwanted piece of bread in a woman's bed, it makes sense that these are tied together. If she's on Atkins, she can't eat bread. If he's bread, she can't have him. So I did a video about this song as well. I'll include a link to that up there. Lots of pointing in the beginning here. It starts off with I Just Woke Up. Notice how in the previous song, he's in a light blue sleeper, and now he's waking up. It is part of depression, part of sadness. It's just sleeping and waking up. The difficulty of both. Depression's terrible. You can't sleep, can't wake up, you can't do anything, right? That's what it is. Here, really, this is the most clear discussion of the cruelty of this lover, mixed in with phone trouble, a Wi-Fi that doesn't work, very haunting guitar and lyrics that join, discussing holes that are trying to be hid. Here, we have another bizarre quote. And what I like about here is the bizarre quote is the quote from this woman that is the point of the entire song. This place is not for any man, nor particles of bread. I hate having crumbs in my bed. It's terrible. So the idea of a woman seeing me as a piece of toast, leaving crumbs in her bed, it's terrible. This guy, if we take the narrator of this entire album as one person, and we'll call him Isaac, but we can call him anything we want, right? Just the person who's singing to us. It's really sad. like already what he's been going through with this being torn apart by his profession and chewed up and all this. And then now here he's trying to find comfort with a person and he's being treated like a piece of bread in bed. I thought you said go to bread. Hey, I wonder if that's a Simpsons reference. It's a famous line where Lisa Simpson is babysitting Bart and she tells him to go to bed. And like 3 hours later, she comes in the kitchen and he's eating bread. And he goes, oh, I thought you said go to bread. That's a far out there theory, but as we will soon learn, I've had some far out theories about this band that have been correct in the past based on Matt Groening cartoons. Another thing that I said on the original album is that I see this song as coming in waves and has a very oceanic feeling. This album has at times space age and concords, but other times it has oceanic feelings. And I said that, it just happened to be that Sergio sees it the same way. I don't necessarily on the band front, but he just sort of saw that. Listening to it this time, I really appreciated the snare, like the way the drums are played on the rims. It just gives a really kind of exciting, snappy feel. Coming up next is the first kind of real new song that I haven't reviewed on this album. And this is why I wanted to wait to do this video, because I'm so excited to talk about this song, Goodwill Hunting. As far as I can tell, it has nothing to do with the movie Goodwill Hunting, which I can barely watch because I'm from Boston. And when they show what Harvard Square used to look like before all the banks moved in, Harvard Square used to be so cool. And everywhere they go there, they just eat at places which are no longer there, that are now Citizen Bank. Anyways, so this song is immediately one of my favorites. It's totally the favorite of my family. I put the song on 2 or 3 times. I crank up the speakers and they're just loving it. It has almost like a THX opening. All these time changes just get you going. It has kind of a cool stutter step. I kind of call it Millennial Cashmere, the Led Zeppelin song, because it has that same kind of like cool, weird rhythmic changes and kind of plodding and uplifting and cool and deep and mysterious. Very kind of uplifting, very simple guitar and drums, usually just like 2 or 3 notes. But then when it gets into this chorus with these backup female vocalists, call, I'll be there. Oh, it's beautiful. And then the weird things about the phones that he's singing. Call, I'll be there. One more thing, I'm afraid of phones, don't call. This constantly broken communication. And then it leads into she had Billie Eilish style, and everybody will say it's cool. That's so much what this album is about, is other people saying things are cool that he doesn't think is cool. So what are you supposed to do if you're doing something that other people say is cool but you don't think it's cool? In a way, lyrically, this might be the saddest song. I'm going to keep saying that about everything, because he imagines a future with this woman, of our genius daughters in France. And it's funny because he talks about France here. He talks about Billie Eilish style, moving to Berlin for a while. Not only is there sort of a theme of America, also the continent. Really, there's somebody who just wants to be at home on his island, who's constantly being forced to other continents here. And it's really the tyranny of everybody will say it's cool. Everybody will say it's cool being in the crowd, Billie Eilish style. There's a little verse on here that's another. If you look at my my list, number 5 there, I think. No, yeah, number 5 is nerd, S-word, nerd-ish. A lot of nerd stuff here. Talking about a burning spaceship and how this woman cares so little about him. And again, this goes perfectly with Bread. Between Goodwill Hunting and Bread, we have a real good portrait of this woman who is not providing the emotional support that the lead singer needs, that the person who's singing needs. And, the escape pods are filled with friends and her photos, and he will float along with the wreckage. I read on Lyric Genius that this is a reference to Titanic. No, it's a starship. It's a reference to Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back, where he's hiding in the garbage thing where Boba Fett is hiding and the Millennium Falcon is hiding in all of the trash behind the Star Destroyer, and they take off after hiding in the trash. That's clear. It's not Titanic. Someone's talking about Chaos Space Marines, and Futurama is going to be talking about Titanic. I don't know. But it's just so clear. He's so in love and so fragile and just so hurt. And then we have we have a couple weird quotations. Never text me nothing, but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find. This paradox of this person. Again, he's just, the amount of things that this person who is singing wants and does not have. And the clarity, he doesn't explain it clearly, but like poetically, there's a poetic clarity to what he needs. And this idea of never contacting, but you can contact me whenever you want. And the way he refers to himself, I'll keep fine. What is that? I'll keep fine. I will keep fine. Like I will stay being fine, or I'm something that you can leave on the shelf and won't spoil. Like a tin of Spam. For my British viewers. Spam, right? Like, is that, like, I'll keep fine. You don't have to worry about me. You can just leave me to rot. I think that's what that means. Haldern is a beautiful song with guitar and this really great saxophone and these tinkling pianos. Great piano all the way throughout here. In a way, there's like a musical connection between this song and there's real connect, like the sequencing, right? Great albums have great sequence. There's no such thing as a good album there's no such thing as a great album with mediocre sequencing. So there's this connective tissue between every song, even if there isn't a straight through line through everything. So these kind of 3 notes, like 3-note guitar riffs that are repetitive, are in both Goodwill Hunting and then in Haldern. The way Isaac describes this is as another song that aims to capture the magic of a moment, a one-off musical creation that can never be entirely replicated again. Apparently, they first performed this song at a festival in some place called Haldern. Never heard of it. I don't even know the names of the singer of Oasis. It's fine. But it's fascinating that they wrote this song completely improvisationally. And I think that's beautiful, and I think it comes through. When I was in a band 20 years ago, we got super full of ourselves, and we thought we could just improvise an entire set. We played a concert at Mass Art, the art school in Boston. It went terribly. We just didn't know what to do. We had all this confidence going in, and then we got stage fright. We just did all this weird stuff, and my lead singer would not stop singing about wizards. Dude, why did you always have to sing about wizards, Keith? It's okay. I mean, he was the best member of the band. It wasn't even close. But that was our attempt at writing songs live, and it's not that easy. But here, what they're able to do is really use the strength of the members, the strength of the numbers. The fact that they have a violin player who's not someone who plays violin sometimes, but who's an integral member of the band as much as a guitar player, as much as a bassist. So this is great drums. It's really sweet. More that kind of Philip Glass sounding repetitive layers. But it has this loose beauty where the guitar and the drums and the horns lead up to the end of a phrase where the violin and the horns and this kind of tinkling sound takes over. Great dynamics just within the each of the bars. And then we have the beautiful dynamics of the last verse, where there's just so much going on, all these layers. And then at the end, we have something that actually reminds me a little bit of that Sons of Kemet album, which is, I think, a pretty important album in the way music's being made right now, based on The Smile and this, where just this great climactic moment, the saxophone is really attacking. And it's riding to this one moment where they're all like going up and they're very moving, interesting passage. Lyrics, these are maybe the most self-contained and least abstract. Maybe it's because it was mostly written live. A very nice verse here. We formed a ring around your home to stop your body leaving, but you burned the final question then, and you rose out through the ceiling. Part of this theme of transformation of bodies. And then the song ends with, I believe, to be a Pietà image. Pietà is Mother Mary holding on to the body of Christ after he's been crucified, made popular by Bellini and Michelangelo. You take my tired body in, you wrap it in your undershirt, and you pray for the pain to leave him. That's the sense that I get of a woman holding on to a limp, basically dead body. That's the image that I get here. There's a lot of Christianity on this album. Someone at some point will probably write a whole paper about the Christianity in this album. Love Thy Neighbor in the first song, Christen to Be Lonely in another, talks of an altar and Jesus on another. There's a lot of Christianity on this album, kind of thrown in. Next song is called Mark's Theme, the middle point of the album. And the first time I listened to it, it's this beautiful saxophone solo. And again, saxophone's not supposed to sound this good. I don't like saxophone. My son doesn't like saxophone. Who wants saxophone? Who wants Clarence Clemens? All saxophonists in rock and roll can burn in hell. That's my usual position. This album, especially the way the saxophone's recorded, completely revises my opinion on that. Even my 16-year-old son, with the head of wood of a 16-year-old, had to admit, it's beautiful. This is just beautiful, the saxophone being played. The saxophone being played that then builds up, and there's a little pause, and then the piano joins. And when I first heard this song, I was coming back from The King and I. It's a Thai restaurant with great tom yum soup in Henrietta, New York. Not an official sponsor, but you should have some. I'm driving back, and there's been snowstorms up here in Western New York. Snowstorms just fallen. And my wife and I are driving, and the car's filled with the beautiful basil smells of Thai food. And we're just having this nice, sweet moment. And this song is this beautiful, bittersweet melody of sweetness that just makes me feel happy and warm. And the song is that. And then I read on Lyric Genius that the song is about the saxophone player's uncle, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, whose name was Mark, who died of COVID. Which totally recontextualizes the song. So now, when I hear the song, my brain is driving back from The King and I with my wonderful wife thinking about eating tom yum soup. And it's contemplating the nature of death and how devastated I would be if someone I knew died of COVID, and how many millions of people on this whole world have to live with that reality. This becomes one of the great, if not the greatest, anthem of the COVID age. This wordless anthem, this bittersweet, mournful dirge, this loving dirge. It's both those things at once now. And then at the end, there's just the sound of this person, Mark, singing kind of nonsense. And it's cute. And it's funny. And it's, listen, there's going to be a lot of talk about COVID in 10 years, 20 years. Hopefully it'll be over by then. And if this song does not feature prominently in the music of COVID, I think this and that Charlie XCX album, I think, are the two best, the best represented, and Chromeo. Those are the three best COVID albums so far. At least this one song. Then we get the place where he inserted the blade. My least favorite song on the album. It's still a masterpiece and I love it. What I love is how it reminds me of Chopin in the beginning. The first couple notes on piano, it reminds me of, I don't know which prelude or nocturne it is, but it has that kind of ethereal feeling. And then very mournful. And Haldern and then Mark's theme and then this song all start off in this kind of mournful way. And here we have an actual flute that goes along with the guitar. According to Isaac Wood, this is influenced by Rough and Rowdy Ways by Bob Dylan, which is an album I reviewed and liked. Not enough for Bob Dylan fans, but I still liked. He said the whole weird bluesy loungy thing where all the instruments blend into one another really appealed to me. It's interesting the way his vocals come in on the song. Usually there's a lot more lead up to his vocals. Here they seem to just pop out. You're scared of the world when you're needed. Lots of themes of broken bones, which by the way were also in Haldern. So again, everything just leads in. So the saxophone. So Haldern has guitars which remind you. So let's see. Intro leads into Chaos Space Marine, the way it sounds, and then Space Marine talks about the Concords, leads into Concords, talks about Athens, leads into Bread Song. Everything kind of leads in, and then this is a whole suite of songs where the saxophone and the bittersweet feelings, and now also the broken bones in both Haldern and the place where he inserted the blade. A lot of elements in here remind me of musicals, like an actual musical. I have a theory about the chorus. Every time I try to make lunch for anyone else in my head, I end up dreaming of you. I have a couple theories. One, there's a general theme of food and bread, right? If you look at my sheet there, food and bread. Like the sustenance that he needs, usually spiritual or nurturing sustenance. And so making lunch exists on that plane. But also, whenever someone says, every time I try to make come on. Every time I try to make love to anyone else in my head, I end up dreaming of you. Those are the lyrics, everybody. I'm sorry. He said, I try to make lunch for everybody else. You just swap out that ch with v and for to with or to. That's what I think the song is really about. And it's about this inability to move on and this love of a person who's not reciprocating. And it is about hunger. Maybe about thirst as well. This crumbled, ghostly relationship. According to Lyric Genius, this is all about watching a cooking show, which makes sense, show me where he inserted the blade. That feels to me like a jealous lover. If you watch enough horror movies, you know that the act of stabbing somebody is often portrayed in a sexual way as something actually penetrating a body. So show me where he inserted the blade. Come on, if this were AC/DC, you'd be like, I know what this song's about. I've got the biggest balls of them all. You know what this is about. But because it's Senor Sad Boy, we don't make that association as well. I don't think it's purely that, but I think it's also that, which is a sign of good lyrics. He also mentions the song Concord again, and then the song Bound 2. Leave Kanye out of this. It's interesting that he brings up Kanye again. One of the lines from the first album is he says, leave Kanye out of this. It's fascinating that in these two albums, he's making these references. Another beautiful work, velvetgeek.com, Bruce White's art. These pop culture figures who are also genius musicians who are shaping the culture. I think he's having a real struggle trying to figure out, is he actually in this company? I would argue yes. But of course, there's three people on screen right now. one of them is not cripplingly sad almost all of the time. And that's me. So, I don't know. I think he wants my life, not theirs. Which I gotta say, I have a pretty good life. Even if I didn't make Jesus. So, it's interesting. I think it's intentional, this pop culture. Now, what's funny here is when I was listening to it one more time, I was listening to the bass line on this kind of musical like chorus. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a Paul McCartney bass line. Oh, it totally reminds me of Paul McCartney, kind of like Beatles, 67-ish, Paul McCartney, kind of Sgt. Peppersy Paul McCartney. Sergio set me straight. Before I even said anything, he just sent me an email out of the blue. That's how excited he is about this album. Out of the blue, saying, by the way, the bass sound on the chorus of The Place, what he calls the song, is a direct sonic reference to the Good Vibrations bass line. Good Vibrations, the song by the Beach Boys, one of the greatest songs, the song that literally broke Brian Wilson's brain when he made it. A reference to the Good Vibrations bass line. When I hear the bass line on the studio, I made Tyler, she's the bass player, overdub the bass part, but this time through a Fender guitar amp with reverb and slap delay to cut through the rest of the instruments. So when I heard that, I knew there was something, but I was 1 degree off. Because the Beatles never would have made any of their... Okay, they would not have made most of their sonic advancements that they made on Sgt. Pepper's if it weren't for the innovations of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. So I wasn't totally wrong. I was just, she was actually playing bass like Kay, the great female bass player for the Beach Boys. I mean, Brian Wilson was the bassist of the band in theory, but it was actually studio musicians who made most of the music. So beautiful that I ended up being sort of right on that. And this is the kind of reason why, even though this video is now at an hour, I'm going to stop soon. I've only got 2 more songs left. But these kinds of details are going to keep popping up. Just, this album is vomiting details of joy. That's gross, man. Why did I say vomiting details of joy? Put in the comments how gross that term is. Yuck. Next song is Snow Globes, my final video that I will point you to up there. Again, with more of an oceanic feel. So I talked a lot about this song very recently, so I'm not going to go into too great detail. But I didn't quite understand, why is he talking about battleships? This whole album is about airplanes, not about boats, right? But it makes sense in the context of Chaos Space Marine. There's also a lot of boats, a lot of travel. The trauma of travel and displacement and isolation and breaks of communication from people. It's all one big soup of this isolation and depression. And so it's also on the boat, or as he calls it, the battleship of memory. This has so I talk a lot about the emotion on this album, and it's a terribly emotional album. For a band, if there's one sort of flaw I would say with For the First Time is it's maybe a little over technical and lacking on deeper emotions. Please correct me. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me, oh my God, Sky, you're a total idiot. I'm not saying it's devoid of emotion, but compared to this album, when you realize what they are capable of emotionally, the part where he just starts saying, ah, and the drums are doing these fills. And it has, again, it's kind of like the Bread song. The whole song feels like waves. It feels like ocean. It's not like a Concorde. It feels like an ocean. It feels like a battleship on the ocean. And the drums are doing these drum fills. And he's saying, ah. It's like he's screaming at the top of his, like Roger Daltrey and Won't Get Fooled Again. But it's muted and restrained. The album ends with Basketball Shoes. The stupidest title for the best. Why is it that 2 of the best, their song titles, I guess they're intentionally bad, like Goodwill Hunting. I guess they just hey, we'll let the music speak for itself. It'll have a bad title. The bassist, Tyler, she says that this is essentially a medley of the whole album. Musical motifs and different songs throughout the album, touches on the themes we've been exploring. The most climactic song on the album wouldn't make sense to finish without it. And that's totally true. In a way, I mentioned Quadrophenia before. In a way, this album is kind of like Quadrophenia in that way, where this final song, there's that beautiful suite of songs on Quadrophenia where Pete Townsend brings in all of the different melodies all the way throughout. It has that kind of summery feeling, But just like little things, like the damn microphone placement on the saxophone, that near and far, it's just so good. And then lyrically, I'm gonna have to take you into the mouth of madness here. So, because I thought it'd be fun if I just showed you. So here's my basketball This is my basketball shoes sheet. And here's some of my notes. Wants home, can't have, must quit. I think that's one of the themes of this song. Concord flies in my room, tears the house to shreds. He wants a house. He wants lunch in his house. He wants to be loved in a house where he can eat lunch. And telling you, I'm in my 40s. I went through a lot of stuff when I was in my 20s and in my 30s for that matter. I got a house. There's no Concords tearing up my walls. I eat bread like every day. And my wife likes bread. It's great. But he can't have it through a situation. I have all these notes here, boats, planes, and trains. He talks about this packed lunch image. I'm feeling kind of normal with a packed lunch. Train rides don't hurt much these days. Trains are a very different kind of mode because he can't actually get out of England, I guess unless he takes the channel here. And then we have some of the best poetry on the album. The way he actually just describes his sadness for us. So if you see me looking strange with a fresh style, I'm still not feeling that great. I dropped my paper. With a fresh style. Billie Eilish style. Do. Fascinating. I'm all over the place. I'm so cool. I'm doing all these things. But you see me, but I'm not doing that great. That's the problem. He's not doing that great. He's just telling us he's not doing that great. And then it's in soft focus all around you. You can't see the football game on my dad's sofa. We are still, and we never look at our phones anymore. On my dad's sofa. What does that imply? It implies that his parents aren't together. I don't know. Divorce? Death? I don't know. I don't know. I literally no idea. But his dad having a sofa. You know, my mom passed, so my dad has a sofa. Used to be their sofa. Now it's my dad's sofa. I spend a lot of time on my dad's sofa watching hockey games. We watch the Boston Bruins play hockey. And actually, he has no cell phone coverage in his house. Jesus Christ. This is about my life. But the image here of like watching the football game, which means soccer for my American fans, watching the soccer game on my dad's sofa, and we don't look at our phones anymore. Is this like sad? Is this happy? I can't read it. God damn it. I'm going to have to think about this for the rest of my life and figure out, is he saying this is positive or not? Then we have another instrumental part and a kind of what I call the pavement part. It sounds like the band Pavement, the indie rock slackercore band Pavement. I haven't felt this way in like ever. Kind of an ironic usage of youth parlance, you know. I haven't felt this way in like ever. You know, he's writing these songs. It's kind of conversational. And the clamp is the cracked smile cheek. The clamp is coming back. The clamp is a cracked smile cheek. So he's going from totally conversational speech, I haven't felt this way in like ever, to, and the clamp is a cracked smile cheek. Total poetic grad school poetry level. And it tortures me. I haven't felt this way in like ever. I am the convo and you are the weather. Fascinating idea. I am the convo and you are the weather. Discussing weather is kind of a boring thing. But now also I'm thinking about the weather, and now I'm thinking about the previous song, Snow Globes. And it's the god of weather, the snow globes. I just thought of this right now. Right now is the first time I realized that he's talking about weather and snow globes, the god of weather. Snow globes don't shake on their own. And here, you are the weather, I am the convo. I don't know. Wait for my next video on this album, would you? I can't do it all. It's not my fault they jammed this album to the gills with interesting stuff. And then the end here, well, there's an instrumental part. And I just want to tell a little story about this instrumental part and about what great albums can do. And I want you, this is audience participation. One of my favorite things about caring this much about music, and if you're 1 hour and 8 minutes in, you care this much about music too, is when a place and a time is associated with a piece of music. And it's totally random. Sometimes you just hear a certain piece of music at a certain time, and it locks in a Proustian way into the depths of your brain, and you can never disassociate them. You know, I remember biking on my way I used to live in Santa Barbara, Goleta, California. I got my doctorate in 17th century French literature, University of California, Santa Barbara. And I was biking past, they had these kind of like student ghetto called the Francisco Torres Towers. I don't know what they call them now. But anyways, these big towers filled with students, right? And I remember biking up this little hill and turning, and I was listening to In Rainbows by Radiohead, and the song Body Snatchers came on. And like every time I hear Body Snatchers by Radiohead, I feel the handlebars. I feel them turning. I feel the lactic acid in my legs, as you know, like it's constantly attached. So this amazing instrumental breakdown, I just happened to be listening to it for the first time, still in that snowstorm. I was driving to work. I was on Owens Road. And I drove past Owens Road Self-Storage, which I drive by every time I drive to work. And there was snow, and there was ice on the ground, and there was just this beautiful this totally epic, cinematic, sweeping, heartbreaking, pick you up and then just throw you on the floor melody. It's as epic as it can possibly be. And I'm driving and I'm doing the hand movements by myself. And I know every single time for the rest of my wonderful life that I'm still working at the college where I work, but I do not speak for. I speak for myself. I do not speak on behalf of my employer at any time. I know I am going to remember every single time. So share with me. I'm just curious. Do you have any moments like that? Get as specific as you want in the comments. I read every comment. I read every single comment. I don't respond to every comment because it makes me seem needy. But I'm curious, like, what music do you have associated with what places? And isn't that a great thing that great music can do? It can make the most mundane place, Owens Road Self-Storage. They just made it like 2 years ago. Like, I used to drive by there and it was an empty lot. Now it's a storage place. And now when I see the storage place, I'll be happy because I will remember February 2022 when this album came out. That leads into the final verse on the album, which talks about my bed sheets now wet. According to Lyric Genius, this is about a wet dream about Charlie XCX. Maybe. I mean, I get that. I can read it that way, and that makes a lot of sense. But I also think it's tying into this childishness, where it could also potentially be wetting your bed. You know, like that sense of loneliness and isolation that you feel from being a bedwetter, you know. And talks about a drone, another form of conveyance. Oh, your generous loan to me with crippling interest. Okay. Your generous loan to me with crippling interest. Right now, I just figured this out. We give him the loan. Our adoration. We loan our adoration to Isaac, oh, great lead singer and vocalist of this band that we love. Here is your gift of our love. We love you. With crippling interest. How is he going to pay it back? He's going to have to make another great album, and another great album, and another great performance. And is he going to be the machine? And is he going to be that clamp with the cracked smile cheek? No. Get out of the band. Free yourself. Thank you for these 2 great albums. Come back if you want, but only come back if you want. Now, interestingly, Sergio also shared a rough cut of this song and was really proud to explain his process. So I want to share that with you too. Took the synth off, there used to be a synth, and put on a grand piano. Totally fills up the song. And there's a part where there's just like a solo snare, very noticeable part. And so he re-recorded that part with just Charlie, the drummer, playing in the middle of the studio, and he shared a cool picture of it, using ambient mics to get the long decay on the snare without using reverb. So that's just, you know, like when we think about like When the Levee Breaks, right? One of the greatest drum beats of all time. They recorded in Aleister Crowley's stairwell. Like, how do you get drums to sound this good? You have to work to get drums to sound this good. So just this one snare and this one little song. And now that I've shared this with you, Black Country New Road Superfan 448, now that I've shared this with you, every time you hear that snare, you're going to go, oh man, that snare's so good. That's how they did it. Okay, well, I think I've talked about this album enough for now. I don't think I need to feel bad. I don't think this was too soon. These are my Patreons. I am waiting for the album to come in the mail, and I bought it with the money that they gave me. So thank you very much to all of my Patreons here. Like all these people here, they give me money, every month, and like because of that, I'm able to buy music and support artists, which is super cool. So thank you to all those people. And if you want to support, patreon.com/Professor Sky. Okay. Tell me your thoughts on the album. Tell me your music moments that are etched in time. And what do you think Billie Eilish style means? Was I right? What was I wrong on all of this? What are the themes that I missed? What should I do for my next video on this album? Until next time, there's the camera.